What is going on, everybody? Nathan here, and this is Salty Productions. Now today I would like to show you my Izzet Funstuff deck that clocks in at around $120 here, which for those of you who aren't familiar with my Magic the Gathering decks, I prefer to make very fun, very spirit of the format commander decks that are a little bit more casual and a little bit lower on the price range, mostly because I don't think that the people who spend, you'll see some decks on here on Tapped Out that clock in at around $3,000, $4,000, and it's like nobody in their right mind is going to spend $3,000 on a dumb-ass deck of cards, right? Unless you're like Magic is your only hobby, but more of the $100 to $150 mark is within the budget of, say, your average college student. And if you can't even afford like a $100 deck, then if anything, Tapped Out froze for a little bit there. And if anything, you can proxy this deck, and when your friends ask you how much the deck costs because they're going to be angry at that you're going to bring a $1,000 deck to the table that's proxied, you can say, well, it's only $100, and they'll be fine with that because $100 is pretty modest. So, also, I want to explain my fun efficiency factor, which you guys have heard this before, but I'm going to get super fancy in this video. So, the fun efficiency factor, in my opinion, clocks in at around $100 to $150. Now, if I go ahead and pull up the wonderful MS Paint here, let me go ahead and draw this graph. I love doing visuals like this because it's just, I don't know, I love graphs. It's early in the morning, I'm sorry, I have no idea what I'm doing. So, this is the fun efficiency graph. So on your x-axis is going to be the price of the deck that you're looking at, and on the y-axis is going to be the amount of fun that you're having. Now, in my opinion, this is the $100 to $150 mark. This is where your fun is going to be the most efficient. Sure, actually, this right here probably could be erased. What this looks more like is, it's going to go a little bit up as you get to the 1,000, as you get to the $1,000 to $2,000 decks. 2K, there we go. Guys, we are fancy MS painters here. So sure, this is going to sort of, go a little bit like that, but it's going to plateau around the, around these higher priced decks. So in my opinion, you're going to get the most bang for your buck, theoretically, out of these $100 to $150 decks. Now, with our fancy MS Paint over with, we'll move on to the actual deck. Wow! We'll move on to the actual deck, which we came here for. So like I said, it clocks in at around $120. We'll take a look at the current mana curve here. This mana curve is actually a little bit more standard looking than you might think. That's because some of these 1 and 2 cost costs here are actually X cost spells. So spells like Comet Storm, Devil's Play, Earthquake. Tapped Out counts those as 1 and 2 converted mana cost spells. So if we actually were to take the actual curve of what your spell costs are going to look like, these two would probably be about halved, and they would be shifted more towards the 8 and 7, maybe 9-ish curves. So what you actually end up having is sort of the standard curve, which looks something like that, with just happen to have a lot of 4-drops, which is totally okay because I think in Commander, your 4-drop is going to be a very standard converted mana cost card. That's just because Commander has a higher curve in general than 60 card formats. And then we have 35 lands here, right there, supported by 4 ramp cards. So pretty solid mana base. Plus, I tend to count card draw as sort of ramp because it's going to make sure that you get your lands. So we have plenty of card draw, a little bit of ramp, and a little bit of lands there. So I think the mana base is definitely solid for this deck. Only 13 creatures, and all of the rest of this stuff is pretty typical of Izzet. You're going to actually be killing your opponents with your instants and sorceries here, which is why there are quite a few of them. And then for our colors, it's only a dual color deck. You're not going to be short on colors. As always, a pretty standard color deviation is to have a little bit more mana than you need for the least favored color of the deck. But this is mostly blue, about 2/3 blue, but there are a lot of fun red spells mixed in. So we will take a look at the pilot of the deck here, Kyranos. Kyranos is just a good stuff card. It's not here for a particular reason. It's here because it's a god, and gods are very consistent players in Commander, just because they're so hard to get rid of. Unless you encounter a mono white player who is running a bunch of exile, then fuck that guy. Don't play with that guy again. Okay, so a 5-cost 6/5 indestructible. You're not going to be using this guy for its for being a creature, because you're never going to garner that much devotion, just because that's how blue and red works. You cast a lot of your dangerous spells using sorceries and instants, which do not count towards devotion. So, but his enchantment effect is really what you're playing him for. So reveal the first card you draw on each of your turns. When you reveal a land card this way, draw a card. So basically it allows you to cycle through your lands, and it will draw you an additional card if you do reveal a land card. So a little bit of extra card draw, and it allows you to cycle through those lands to actually hit what you need. And then whenever you reveal a non-land card this way, which will happen most of the time, Kyranos will ping something for 3, whether it's target creature or player. So that is very utility. You can kill off, maybe a really dangerous, very expensive creature that only has, 3 health. Like something like a Narset would be a perfect target, except that Narset has hexproof. Or you could just ping somebody for 3, which is pretty cool. This guy is a little bit expensive. I would maybe suggest taking out Kyranos if you're looking to drop the price of the deck a little bit more. He is $13, but otherwise he's a very consistent commander, and I like him a lot. I actually like using most of the gods. Take a sip of water. Mouth getting dried up. Okay. I'll move on to the, I suppose we could move on to the meat of the deck, but I prefer attending to the mana base first. So 35 lands, nothing super special here. These are pretty standard lands for Commander. Halimar Depths is a great land. Again, nothing really of note here. Myriad Landscape, for some reason, has climbed to $3. I'm not really sure why. Reliquary Tower is probably the most notable land. You'll definitely want to run this because the Nomax hand size when you are running blue is pretty great. And then that is supported by 4 ramp cards, which again are nothing special. You have your Soul Rings, you have your Solemn Spelacrum, Thought Vessel for the unlimited hand size, and Thran Dynamo. This would be a card that I would cut if you're, again, looking to reduce the cost of the deck a little bit. I would replace it with Worn Power Stone, which is a 60-cent card, I believe, which basically does the same thing, except that you can't use the mana right away, and it's a little bit less efficient. Worn Power Stone, again, is a staple of Commander, so I'm pretty sure I don't need to go into that too much, but we will go ahead and jump into the meat of the deck here, now that we have established a pretty good mana base. So this fun stuff category is... I think... Okay, whatever. Oops. So this fun stuff category is a little bit more miscellaneous than I think I would prefer to believe. Aetherize is going to be one of those douchey blue cards that I'm sure everybody loves to run because it's so douchey. But this is basically the red button that you press when you're in either the last 1v1 of the match and you need to buy yourself a turn, or you just need to buy yourself a turn because you have angered your opponents. So that's going to be a great card. Plus, the Squall functions functions similarly to Aetherize, except that it has a little bit more utility because you can actually use it to get your attackers through if you happen to have a really strong board presence. So that's pretty cool. Dax Duplicate is going to be one of the best creatures in this deck, actually. So normally in the blue colors you get a 4-cost copycat creature that's pretty standard, but with Dax Duplicate what makes it amazing is that it has haste primarily, but also Dethrone is kind of nice, but it's not going to be doing too much. But the most important thing here is haste. You get to copy a massive, crazy creature. Let's say your opponent has Blightsteel Colossus on the board. That's just insane. You go ahead and copy that and swing with it right away. So that's going to be pretty crazy. Dominus of Fealty, that will net you permanence every turn, which is amazing. The effect alone is amazing. But when you factor in that you're getting a 4/4 flyer for 5, even without the ability, that's very efficient in itself. Firemind's Foresight is going to net you a bunch of cool instants. There are enough what will be classified as 1, 2, and 3 instant converted mana cost cards in the deck where that you won't actually fail one of the tutors. So, you know, for example, you can grab your, no, that's a sorcery. You can grab your Pongifies, you can grab your Rapid Hybridization for the 1, you can grab, you know, Dissolve for a 3, and then if you want to, I would recommend grabbing Cyclonic Rift on the 2 cost, because Cyclonic Rift is freaking awesome. Goblin Electromancer is just a good card to include in Izzet decks. Hypersonic Dragon. Now, what's crazy about this card is its efficiency. Again, much like Dominus of Fealty, with Hypersonic Dragon, you're getting a 4/4 flyer with haste for 5. That's crazy in itself. But what's even crazier is its ability. You may cast sorcery spells as though they had flash. So that's freaking amazing, and I'm glad that this guy has haste, because that means you can swing with him right away, because he'll become a target by your opponents just because he's so good. Increasing Vengeance is an amazing card, because ideally you use this card when you are playing a massive bomb card, like your Blatant Thieveries, your Clone Legions, your Epic Experiments. Go ahead and copy that so you get to do it twice. But ideally, you know, you might Increasing Vengeance, even a weaker spell, and then ideally, once you have that bomb in hand, you flash it back from your graveyard to copy that thing twice. So imagine a Clone Legion copied twice. That's just freaking crazy. I can't believe that card's only $1. Leyline of Anticipation is going to be pretty much a $9 card, and it deserves to be a $9 card because it's so good. I don't think I need to explain anything about this card. It's just that good. Mystic's Mastery, I would only cast this for its overload cost in the late game, because you can cast all the spells again. And so again, if we actually go back to our curve here, so you have cards like Mystic's Mastery, which is mostly going to be cast for its overload cost. So what this should actually be is like an 8 cost within the curve here. So again, more evidence that this curve is not very accurate. Mystic Confluence, a very expensive card. I would maybe cut this card if you're looking to bring the price down a little bit more. But this card is great because it's so versatile. You can just do anything. Counter target spell, bounce creatures, draw cards. It's all there. Phyrexian Metamorph is a $6 card, and rightly so, because you can copy pretty much anything on the battlefield, whether it's a creature or an artifact. So, you know, if you want your a second Thran Dynamo, go ahead, go for it. Prophetic Bolt is it really has the essence of Izzet in this card, because you're doing exactly what Izzet likes to do, which is burn stuff and then do crazy blue stuff, in this case drawing more cards. So you're going to deal 4 damage to something, and then you're going to go ahead and draw a card, but you get to basically scry 4 first. Spell Twine, you can go ahead and, you know, if your opponent has a Stormherd sitting in their graveyard, then go ahead and copy that and get one of those for yourself. Copying your opponent's stuff is so great in Commander. I love it because everybody's running these crazy spells, and that means that you get to copy them as well. Stitch in Time, I love this card because it's so Izzet. I love RNG and Magic. Not really, but instead of running those really expensive 5 cost or 6 cost, you know, blue cards that say, hey, take an extra turn, I will instead counter with, you know, make that a 3 cost, and we'll give ourselves a 50% chance of actually taking that extra turn. So if you really wanted to make this deck better, maybe replace this with one of those, you know, 6 cost, take an extra turn. But otherwise, if you want this deck to be fun stuff, then keep Stitch in Time in there, because that's you have fun at the game table when you're playing Commander. And Wild Ricochet is pretty much a classic auto-include for red. This is your red button. Much like Aetherize for creatures, it's your red button for spells. And you get to go ahead and copy that and redirect whatever you want. Okay, moving on to basically your game finishers, we have our bombs. And the bombs are the most fun aspect of this entire deck. Blatant Thievery, for each opponent gain control of target permanent that player controls. So if you want to be a douchey blue player, go ahead and play this card. And even if I wasn't, or let me rephrase that, even if you're not a douchey blue player, this card is too good anyway, because it targets permanents and not creatures, so you can go ahead and take that one artifact or that one enchantment that has been impossible to get rid of the entire game. Clone Legion, go ahead and spawn a bunch of creatures, and that's amazing. I don't even know if I need to explain this card. Epic Experiment, cast all the spells. Again, not much to explain here. Just great card. Insurrection, I continue to be amazed that this card is not banned, because this is literally an I win card for red. You wait until there's even a moderate board presence, go ahead and cast this card, and then they gain haste until, like, you get to basically one-shot somebody with this card. There's no doubt about it. How is this card not banned? I have no idea. Mob Roll is basically the same thing, but for less money. You go ahead and just one-shot somebody. It's just freaking crazy. Rite of Replication, always cast this for its kicker cost in the late game, so that you can get 5 Wormcoil Engines for the hell of it. Ramp cards we already went over, and then also in the finisher category is our burn spells. So Comet Storm, you know, just burn people for a lot of damage. Devil's Play, it was... So I had a large selection of burn spells to play, and I chose Devil's Play as the third one because of its flashback ability. I just figured it's better to have more options going into the late game, because this card can basically possibly finish somebody off if they're at 20 life in the span of 2 turns. So I figured its flashback cost was definitely worth keeping it in. And then Earthquake can function either as a board wipe or trying to burn as many people as possible. So good utility there. Okay, and then our supporting cards. So here's the thing. When you play all of these crazy fun stuff, not only are you going to need to keep playing all of this stuff, so we need to refill our hand somehow with our card draw cards. Brainstorm is going to be one of those cards that's useful in both the early and the late game. You know, you cast this card on turn 1, you're looking for land. You cast this card on turn 10, you're looking for spells. So Brainstorm is just always a great card to draw. Concentrate, just really efficient card draw 3 for 4. Fact or Fiction, a blue classic. Illusory Ambusher is mostly included because it's a douchey blue spell for no other reason. This card will draw you a bunch of cards at basically the reverse speed of a sorcery, so only on your opponent's turns. But the thing is, you might get to try to kill off one of your opponent's creatures that has toughness 4 or less. So that's pretty great. You can either sort of sacrifice it to draw a bunch of cards to not kill your opponent's huge creature, or you can maybe play it to kill off one of your opponent's small creatures when it's heading into combat, but only draw a small amount of cards. So that is definitely a versatile card. Again, Recurring Insight is a blue classic. I can't believe that this card isn't banned as well, but just because I've always managed to draw 10 plus cards off of this spell. Rhystic Study, another classic blue include. I don't think this needs explaining. You either draw a bunch of cards or drain your opponents for mana, so it's a pretty versatile card that way. And Steam Augury is a reverse fact or fiction. So once you, again, cast a bunch of stuff, cast a bunch of really cool stuff, you might make your opponents a little angry. So we have some board wipes to keep the anger at bay. Aether Gale is going to return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. Now, this is not technically a board wipe, but it is so efficient. You get to bounce 6 target non-land permanents for 5 mana. That's crazy efficient. So I consider this kind of a board wipe because it can target basically whatever you want, so that's great. Arc Bond is going to basically wipe the board whenever a creature takes damage. Blasphemous Act, pretty much a classic red card, just a great board wipe. Chain Reaction is great in Commander. Cyclonic Rift is amazing. Always cast this for its overload cost, and it's crazy because it's returning each non-land permanent you don't control. So this is pretty much the most efficient board wipe I could think of, period, because you get to keep your own stuff, which is crazy. And then Miscellaneous Mortars is going to... I'm kind of torn on Miscellaneous Mortars because it's a great card in that you're going to deal 4 to each creature you don't control, assuming you cast it for its overload cost. But the thing is, in Commander, I'm not really sure if 4 damage is good to actually finish off a lot of creatures, just because creatures tend to be so large. But I think this will actually hit, 75% of the creatures that your opponents control. So even if we reword this to Miscellaneous Mortars deals, Miscellaneous Mortars, destroys 75% of your opponent's creatures, then that's still, pretty good for being 6-cost overload, being you get to keep your own stuff. And then we have some defenders, so, your token opponents are going to be stopped in their tracks by Crawl Space. This card is just so good. It's in most of my commander decks. Fog Bank for the trolls, and Guard Gomazoa for the trolls. So you get to stop tokens this way, and you get to stop big fatties this way. And then we have some spot removals. So Chaos Warp is really fun. This is sort of one of those red RNG sort of spells where you have a chance of placing something super scary on the board, but if not, you get to basically exile target non-land permanent, so that's really fun that way. Pongify and Rapid Hybridization are the same thing. These are worth it because in Commander, a 3/3 creature is not going to be doing a whole lot, so it's worth it for that just 1-cost destroy target creature. Supplant Form is another great creature. You basically get to bounce a creature and get that creature on the battlefield for yourself. So, lots of fun to be had with this card as well. And then, if your opponents are casting ridiculous spells your way, go ahead and dissolve that, and you get to scry 1. Go ahead and negate that massive, board wipe that's incoming. Or you can go ahead and Essence Backlash, a very, very scary creature. So ideally this hits your Blightsteel Colossus, or what have you, where you get to burn somebody for a lot of damage and counter the spells. So super douchey both ways. And then, so we have some beaters as well. These are sort of miscellaneous category. Frost Titan is just a good stuff card. It doesn't really fit any particular theme. It sort of has hexproof, and you get to tap stuff, so that's kind of fun. And then Niv Mizzet Draco Genius is you can either draw a bunch of cards, or you basically get a 5/5 flying body for 6 mana, which is crazy. And you don't even need to use its mana ability to draw cards. You could just swing with it, and you get to draw cards. So that's pretty great. And then if your opponents have really scary artifacts or enchantments, we have Distorting Wake, which can also target creatures. Fiery Confluence to basically destroy 3 target artifacts if you really want to. So this card is crazy. And then Vandal Blast, which is another amazing artifact. Artifact destroying card. So the weakness in this deck is not being able to target enchantments very well. That's sort of what I learned with this deck, because there aren't any spells that say directly, hey, destroy target enchantment. It's things like Distorting Wake, things like Aether Gale, which are going to bounce enchantments away. So that is one weakness of the deck. And then we have our miscellaneous category here, Lightning Greaves. This deck isn't very creature focused, so Swiftfoot Boots is not also included in this deck, but I figured if you happen to have, a really scary creature on the board, which you are likely to have given any point in the game, between your Frost Titans or your Blatant Theories, your Clone Regions, or your Copycats, Dax Duplicate, or your Phyrexian Metamorph, I figured it was worth it to include one of these, just because Lightning Greaves is so amazing. And then Rouse Zarek. I actually did manage to get his ultimate off in the last game that I played with this guy, so I got to take 3 extra turns, and using those 3 extra turns, I actually closed out the game, so that was a lot of fun. And then I think that's it, actually. So here's the deal. I had, if we take a look at our maybe board here, I had a really hard time actually cutting all of the cards down to fit in this deck. I had just so many fun cards to include, but the top 7 are supposed to the last 7 to be cut. I figured I would include in here. So acquire is going to be 2 to your opponent's library for an artifact card. This is just a really fun blue card to cast. And, you know, cards like Bribery would also be included. Bribery is one of those cards that you include in the super expensive decks because it's a $25 card and you can tutor for literally anything in your opponent's deck. That's so crazy. But Acquire is sort of the budget version of that, but it still did not make the cut. Again, like I mentioned before with the big burn spells, I had a bunch to choose from, and like I know that Banefire is valuable in that it can't be countered, which is freaking awesome. But again, I figured Devil's Play, the flashback, is so useful, so Devil's Play beat out Burnfire. Desperate Ravings is kind of a cool Izzet card draw cards, but it's a little bit too much heavy on the RNG side. I figure that if anything with RNG, you don't want RNG backfiring into your hand, because that can actually like ruin the game for you. So that card did not make the cut. Galvanoth can retrieve a bunch of spells. Oh, I actually forgot my spell retrieval section. I'll get to that in a little bit. Galvanoth is a really slow spell retrieval creature, and I figured that this guy would die basically before he was even that useful, so he did not make the cut. Sphinx Bone Wand is really cool in theory, but it's way too slow. Wall of Frost is another defender. And then again, the Worn Power Stone to replace the Rain Dynamo if you want a little bit of a cheaper deck. So our spell retrieval cards, when you're casting these massive bomb spells and these massive burn spells, you're going to want to go ahead and return those back to your hand to cast them again. How much fun is that? So Charmbreaker Devil can become both a massive creature, but it's also going to return an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard to your hand every single turn. Mystic Retrieval, go ahead and retrieve something from your graveyard to your hand, and you can go ahead and flash it back for an even cheaper cost. Nuclevi is going to net you an instant and a sorcery card from your graveyard, plus it's a nice 4/4 body. Pull from the Deep, get 2 instants and sorceries. And then Volcanic Vision is another board wipe, but it does retrieve another spell. So technically there are 7 board wipes here, but Volcanic Vision is very efficient because you basically get to, return your Clone Legion, to your hand, and then you can go ahead and hit your opponent's creatures for 9 goddamn damage. That's insane. So Volcanic Vision is an amazing card in the right situation. Alright, that's pretty much what I have for this deck. This deck is so much fun to play, and I think I would play this pretty much all in almost every single scenario over my mono blue deck, because it's just so much more fun that way. If you're looking to actually win games and close out games, you can get a lot done with mono blue just because there are certain cards that play off of your blue devotion and stuff, such as Stormtide Leviathan and Deep Sea Kraken. But if you're looking to have a fun time, then Izzet is where it's at, and that is what this deck is all about. So that is the video, guys. Thank you all for watching. I would absolutely appreciate it if you could leave a rating on the video. Otherwise, if you really enjoy my type of content, then feel free to subscribe. And if you really love me and you really want to make a difference, not only for me, but for other YouTubers, then perhaps consider disabling ad block for YouTube. And that's pretty much all I have for you today. Au revoir, adios, and whatever goodbye is in other languages. All right, goodbye.